So we're looking at a big collection of material today. Executive orders, fact sheets, proclamations.
Right. And across all of it, there's this really aggressive theme of using executive power to drive these huge policy changes in trade and healthcare.
And justifying it all as immediate relief for the American worker.
Exactly. And that's where we should probably start with the economic story they're telling.
I've been reading through those documents, and they paint a very clear picture.
Oh, it's crystal clear. Too clear, really. You have rising wages, you have moderating home prices, and every single positive sign is presented as a direct result of one specific policy.
It's a very clean narrative. A causes B.
But the big issue here, the thing that jumped out at me immediately, is that they're presenting concurrent economic trends as direct, undeniable results of specific policy actions. And that really compromises the intellectual honesty of the whole thing.
So it's a classic correlation versus causation problem.
A massive one. The weakness is this faulty logic where, just because two things happen at the same time, one must have caused the other.
And for an audience that understands economics, that's a huge red flag.
It is. Take the American Workers Win Big document. It says a 4% rise in real weekly earnings is because of powerful tariffs and massive tax cuts, period.
It just skips over everything else?
Completely. It ignores the post-pandemic labor market, supply chains normalizing, the normal economic cycle.
And what about the claim linking mass deportations to lower crime and higher wages?
That's maybe the most egregious example. You can't just draw a straight line there without acknowledging all the other complex variables. It feels more symbolic than based in any kind of real economic mechanism. You risk misleading people about where their stability is actually coming from.
I can see the political appeal, though. It's a simple, strong message. Doesn't adding a bunch of caveats about inflation or labor dynamics weaken the message of strong leadership?
Well, for a short-term headline, maybe. But if the goal is actual public trust, genuine stability, then yes, you have to be honest about the complexity.
Because the material becomes fragile otherwise.
Exactly. To strengthen it, the claims have to either show the work, detail the actual policy mechanism, or just acknowledge that these are complex situations with many causes.
So the suggestion is to shift the language.
Yes, move away from X cost Y and toward X contributed to Y, and here's how. If the link is direct, spell it out. If not, be honest about it.
Can you give me a concrete example of that?
Sure, let's take the tariffs again. In that American Workers Win Big piece, instead of just saying tariffs boosted wages, show me the data.
Show the mechanism.
Right. Pinpoint the capital investment from a tax cut that created a specific demand for, say, steelworkers, which then led to those wage hikes. Show the chain of events.
And on the other side?
On the deportations and housing prices claim, they need to clarify that, the price moderation in those cities might also be heavily influenced by easing mortgage rates, which they mention elsewhere, or the new ban on big investors buying up homes.
Otherwise, it just looks like you're picking the most politically useful reason and ignoring everything else.
It becomes deceptive. Focusing on the mechanism makes the claim verifiable, not just a lucky coincidence.
Okay, so that's the economic attribution. Let's pivot to the trade policies. Because there, the mechanism itself seems designed to favor some very specific interests. I'm talking about the new 25% tariff on advanced computing chips.
Ah, yes. Section 232, National Security. The stated goal there is perfectly clear.
We need to make more chips in the U.S. and rely less on foreign suppliers. Simple.
It is simple, until you read the fine print.
The exemptions. They're incredibly broad. The tariff doesn't apply if the chips are going to U.S. data centers, R&D, startups, consumer apps.
Basically, it doesn't apply to the biggest and most powerful U.S. tech consumers.
And that's the conflict, right? Does this actually help build up domestic manufacturing if the biggest customers are exempt? It seems to benefit the wealthy and powerful companies far more than any American worker.
That's the core weakness. You're shielding the hyperscalers, the huge data center operators, from the cost of the tariff. The whole point of a tariff is to create a price shock to make domestic options more attractive.
But if your biggest buyers, the ones buying up all the high-end AI chips from NVIDIA and AMD, if they're sheltered from that shock, where's the incentive for them to switch to a future American-made chip?
There isn't one. They have no economic reason to. So the policy ends up punishing smaller importers who aren't exempt, while basically giving a hidden subsidy to the biggest tech firms to keep buying foreign chips.
So by protecting the biggest buyers, you're starving the new domestic market of the demand signal it needs to even get off the ground.
You've just gutted your own policy. It's symbolic for the companies that dominate AI, but it doesn't build anything here.
So how do you fix that? How do you make this policy actually do what it says it's going to do?
You need accountability. The exemptions can't be a free pass. The benefits for big business have to be tied to them investing back into the U.S.
So the suggestion is to build a framework around these exemptions.
A robust, transparent one. You link the exemption to a real, verifiable commitment to buy American in the long term. That's how you turn a corporate loophole into a strategic investment tool. Workers need to see jobs from this, not just fatter profit margins for big tech.
And what would that look like in practice?
For starters, the Commerce Secretary needs to publish a clear methodology for how a data center gets certified for an exemption.
And that would require what? A binding contract?
Exactly. A binding contract with a future U.S. chip fab, or a clear investment timeline showing they're helping build that domestic capacity over, say, the next 36 months.
And you'd need a way to track it.
Of course. You mandate public reporting. Track how many chips are being exempted and measure that against the actual progress of new domestic fabs. And if we get to, say, mid-2026 and domestic capacity hasn't grown, then that exemption needs to have a sunset clause. It goes away or the rate changes.
That adds the teeth the policy is missing. Okay, we've hit weak causality in economics and selective exemptions in trade. Let's move to the last piece, the Great Healthcare Plan.
Ah, yes.
Rhetorically, it's a home run. End government payoffs to big insurance companies and give money directly to the American people. That's powerful stuff.
It's incredibly powerful. Restoring dignity, giving people control. Who can argue with that? But this is where the lack of detail creates the biggest, most immediate risk to regular people.
Because they're proposing a monumental shift in how money moves through the system.
And the weakness is the profound ambiguity around how they'll actually deliver these direct payments. They promise to stop sending billions to insurers and send it straight to eligible Americans. But the how? It's just a black box.
And in the meantime, they're turning off the old system.
Right. If you terminate the existing subsidies to insurers before the new direct payment system is fully working, seamless, and on time, you could have millions of people facing a catastrophic gap.
They could lose their coverage because they can't make a premium payment on time.
And that just completely undermines the whole dignity argument. That financial transition has to be guaranteed or you risk hurting the very people you claim to be helping.
When a plan is this vague on the implementation, it starts to feel like the announcement was the point, not the actual execution.
It certainly raises that question. The suggestion here is non-negotiable. They have to include a specific, staged implementation plan. They must prove they can make this transition without anyone falling through the cracks.
So you build the new bridge before you tear down the old one.
You have to. And in terms of concrete examples, first, they need clear legislative language on the how. Is this a tax credit, a preloaded health savings account, a direct deposit?
And the timing has to be perfect.
Absolutely critical. If premiums are due on the 1st of the month, that money needs to be in your account by the 25th of the month before. Guaranteed. No exceptions.
What about the other piece they mention? Fully funding the cost-sharing reductions, the CSRs.
That's the second example. They promise that funding CSRs will lower premiums by 10–15%. Great. But they need to show how that happens at the same time they're dismantling the ACA tax credits. You need an administrative bridge to ensure the market for low-income families doesn't just destabilize in the transition.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, looking at how these policies really function in practice, not just in theory.
And we found some reoccurring gaps, didn't we?
We did. It started with the economic claims needing much stronger attribution, moving beyond symbolic causality. Then the national security tariffs, which seemed structured to shield powerful corporate interests rather than build up domestic industry.
And finally, the healthcare plan, which carries this huge implementation risk in its direct payment idea.
And our suggestions really focused on execution and transparency across the board.
Right. We called for verifiable mechanisms to back up the economic wins, real accountability tied to those tariff exemptions, and just robust administrative detail to protect people during the healthcare transition.
Ultimately, it all comes down to making sure the stated intent, helping workers, securing the nation, is actually matched by how these policies are designed and implemented.
Instead of just relying on powerful rhetoric and happy coincidences.
Exactly. We look forward to seeing how these materials might evolve, and we invite the listener to submit their revised work back to us for more discussion.